twinkle in the night so bright, guiding paths with gentle light. Echoes of the past we hear, carried on the wind so clear. Colors blend in harmony, life's a vibrant tapestry. Every beat a story told, ancient wisdom pure as gold. Let the rhythm take you high, raise your hands up to the sky. Feel the energy ignite, celebrate the day and night. Colors blend in harmony, life's a vibrant tapestry. Every beat a story told, ancient wisdom pure as gold. Let the rhythm take you high, raise your hands up to the sky. Feel the energy ignite, celebrate the day and night.
There we go.
Sorry, Larry.
Your stuff's here, Alex.
You have seen me because you came and talked to me about.
Hello, everybody. We're just about to kick off the session.
Sorry.
You're on time.
Basically, I can imagine this could be a photo show, and this could also be a photo show. This is a long way.
Does anyone have a regular iPhone charger I can borrow? I just need to use it just to turn my AirPods on because I have the 16, so I have a USB-C. No one has. Yeah, I need a regular. Yeah, I have USB-C, but my AirPods take the regular one, and I just need to read.
I have it in my office, but not here. Which is a good reason to come by and start talking about your paper.
Professor Plummer, we're ready when you are.
Okay.
Sorry.
So, students, colleagues, Micah,
Yes, that's
it's my pleasure to introduce the panel today, Friday panel, as part of Africa Awareness Week. Our moderator is Tony Tiyu, who is the director of recyclables in Africa. I also wanted to introduce Dr. Hamali Aza, who is one of the co-instructors of our environmental studies course this semester. Tony, I leave it to you.
Excellent. So good afternoon or good morning to everybody, because I know we're all joining from different places. So very excited to talk to you today. Welcome to these essential discussions on renewable energy solutions for the expansion of data center in Africa. So I'm Tony Tiyu, CEO of Renewables in Africa, and I'll be the moderator today. Yeah. So hopefully you can all hear me. You can all hear me, right? So let me just check that first. Okay, I think we're good. Excellent. So first of all, I want to begin like I sometimes do with a fact that hopefully will highlight why this conversation that we're having today is so important. So I don't know if you know, but by 2030, so we can have data center that are projected to consume about 8% of the world electricity. Why? Because of AI, right? And many other things in IT as well. Yet, as we're talking about 8% of the world electricity, so we know the continent of Africa is always it's still struggling with some energy deficit. Yep. And as the continent digital economy grows, so how do we actually ensure that our data center infrastructure is at the same time sustainable, reliable, and also powered by clean energy? And that is the question that I want us to focus on today and to discuss, right? But before I jump into that, so I'm also conscious of the fact that not all of us fully understand what data center is. That it has become almost a buzzword, data center, data center. But what is it really? What does that really mean when you talk about data center? So the data center, they are the backbones of the digital world, right? So you're talking about housing servers, you're talking about networking equipment that at the same time will store, will process, and manage the data. Yeah. So that means, in other words, so every time you access the clouds, every time you make a financial transaction, or you stream content, we all like to stream in here, right? Or maybe having so many other things, playing videos, games. Yeah. Data centers are working behind the scene to make it possible. That is actually what you need to understand. And for the country of Africa, data centers are not just about technology. They are really a key driver, I believe, for economic growth, yeah, financial inclusion as well, digital innovation. And as industry embraces digital transformation, data center will play, I believe, a pivotal role in banking, in healthcare, in education, e-commerce, and also beyond. And with the rapid expansion comes a challenge. And that is a great challenge to tackle, which is how do we power these energy hungry facilities, right? Sustainably in a region where we know access to electricity is still a major issue. That's exactly what we're going to explore today with the distinguished panel that have gathered today. So I have with me here Moses Kemibaro, who's the founder of CEO of Dot Savvy Limited. He talked about the insight to global energy demand of data center and also the opportunity that it brings for the continent of Africa. Uh, Tyler Herbert, who's the Director of Investor Relations and Partner at Energia. So he will highlight investment opportunity in large-scale renewable energy solution. And John Jordan, who's a co-founder and managing partner of Fight for Light, and share some real-world insights from working data center project in Africa. So I'm just going to allow my colleague very briefly to start. Gentlemen, keep it very short, and after that, let's kick off in some very meaningful, useful discussion. So I can start by you, Moses. Maybe you can flash your camera so the audience can see who you are.
All right, great. I hope I'm visible. Great to meet you all, and thank you so much for joining us for this panel. And I think the situation that we look at when you think about the global data center scenario, I think as Tony has mentioned, is a lot of digital services and things that we take for granted actually run within data centers. In the last couple of years, we'll say that probably the AI revolution or the AI era has been instrumental in driving the uptake or the relevance of data centers, so to speak. And to just give you a sense of some of the numbers, the global data center market size is expected to reach something like 254 billion US dollars by 2029, with a compounded annual growth rate of 14.9% from 2024 to 2029. In terms of the IT load capacity, we're expecting it to reach about 72,000 megawatts by 2029, which is an enormous amount of energy. And we can also see that some of the key drivers, really, again, that are driving this growth are things such as what we call hyperscale data centers. This is for sort of our cloud computing and AI. We have companies like AWS, Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud, and so forth dominating this space. 5G and data traffic growth, the rollout of 5G networks as we move from sort of 3G to 4G is demanding higher bandwidth services. And this is really increasing the demand for storage and processing capacity. We also have edge computing, which demands low latency applications. So things like autonomous vehicles, smart cities, industrial Internet of Things are also leading to increased edge data center deployments. And then another big thing that we're also seeing, and this is a global theme, is the issue of regulations and data sovereignty, where governments are implementing data localization laws, meaning that data centers have to be domiciled in order to host data within national borders. And this again has also accelerated data center investments worldwide. However, there's a big conundrum as well because data centers are notorious sometimes causing significant environmental damage. And again, you'll find that data centers currently, are responsible for up to 1% of global electricity consumption, which is rising significantly compared to previous years. We also see the average power usage effectiveness for traditional data centers is around 1.6 to 2.0, meaning that for every 1 watt used for computing, an additional 0.6 to 1 watt is used for cooling and other operations. It's almost like one for one that what you use, you also have to cool to that extent. And then, of course, to mitigate some of the environmental impact, renewable energy starting to gain currency, where we see major data center operators shifting towards solar, wind, hydroelectric energy sources. And this is something like in Kenya, where I'm based, we see that most of our energy actually is green, and many data centers are setting up here because the energy sources in this market tend to be green. And then innovations like liquid cooling, AI-driven energy optimization, and also modular data center design are also being implemented to improve energy efficiency. So that's kind of like give you sort of a macro picture of the situation, some of the energy considerations, the key drivers for growth, and more importantly, just giving us a starting point in sort of understanding the landscape, as it were.
That's beautiful, Moses. Definitely, we could see that it's clearly a phenomenon that's happening here. And like you say, it's now really sort of spearheaded by AI, which actually is taking us to a different dimension. So thank you very much for that, for this great overview of data center energy worldwide. And I want to shift now into the focus for opportunity in terms of large scale solar and renewables energy. And I want to turn to you, Tyler. So, because I believe you may want to share with us some insight about how we can potentially integrate clean energy solution into the Africa growing digital infrastructure. So, Tyler?
Yeah, thanks, Tony. My name's Tyler Hurlbert. I'm the Director of Investor Relations at Energia. Energia is an online investment platform that connects retail investors like myself, yourself, to renewable energy projects around the globe. And right now we have 3 open investment offerings on the platform. We have a portfolio of solar projects in the US. We also have a portfolio of projects in Brazil and one in Africa, primarily Botswana and South Africa, but we're expanding into all areas throughout Africa, as I'll mention in a minute. But yeah, I think these data centers are obviously, they take up a tremendous amount of power, and if we can power them with renewable energy, then that's just a win-win, for technology and advancing, humanity forward, hopefully, but also doing it in a clean and responsible way. So basically what we do at Energia, just to kind of give a little overview, John Moore, who's on this call with us today, is an investor with Energia, and he's the one who connected us to the panel. But we basically allow investors to invest in these renewable energy projects, in these portfolios of renewable energy projects from around the world for as low as $100. So we have literally college students like yourself, putting in $100 where they have it to invest in their future and also move forward with renewable energy projects. And then we have, larger, more, developed high net worth institutional investors as well, and everyone in between. So we really believe in kind of democratizing renewable energy investing around the globe. So this was not an investment or an asset class that you could invest in up until 3 or 4 years ago when Energia launched its platform. So they're strong returns, they're impactful returns. We pay monthly dividends to investors. So basically, these solar projects produce electricity. We sell that electricity under a long-term contract. We pay any expenses to run the projects, maintenance, taxes, insurance, things like that. And then whatever's left each month, we pool that money and distribute it back to our investors based on the shares of that portfolio that they own. So a little bit about us. I did want to try to share a quick video because we were really excited. Our co-founder and managing partner, Mike Silvestrini, He worked for the Peace Corps in Mali for a while in Africa. He now serves on a nonprofit in Africa called Big Life, which is a conservation group primarily in Kenya, but throughout the country, working to kind of, really protect the most valuable ecosystem in the world. So we're very Africa is a place that's really near and dear to our heart. I climbed Kilimanjaro myself and spent a few weeks in Africa a couple of years ago, and it's just an amazing country. And we just were there recently and signed the Abidjan Accord, and this video is going to share a little bit about that with you here. So hopefully this works.
Yeah, that should be okay.
It's asking me for a password, Tony.
Okay.
Hold on.
Really? Oh no,
Oh,
that's it. You're good now. It's coming.
There we go. This should hopefully work.
Did you check the sound?
Will grow from 10%
Okay, that's fine.
to
That's fine
25%
now.
of the world's working age population. To ensure this shift has positive economic, geopolitical, and security impacts, the continent requires significant investment. Bridgewater, the world's largest hedge fund, and Global Citizen, a leading community organizer, hosted a meeting in Abidjan, Cote d'Ivoire, amongst the leaders of African industry and investment. A group including 6 African presidents, the president of the World Bank, the president of Bridgewater Associates, government ministers, research analysts, and Energia were invited to participate in the discussion. Participants signed at Abidjan a commitment between the investing community and African leadership to work collaboratively to address the continent's most pressing needs, while fostering an environment safe for investors. The results of this meeting were impressive. Energia benefited from fresh ideas and new relationships, which we hope will result in exciting new projects across the continent. The opportunity to invest in Africa and create appropriately risk-adjusted returns is real, and it has to happen now. We look forward to announcing new partnerships and new projects as negotiations progress. To learn more, log into energia.com today. Check out Solarize Africa.
Awesome. Yeah, so that's just a little taste of kind of what we were up to down in Abidjan, signing the accord, and we're really excited. The Solarize Africa portfolio, just to close out real quick, is an investment. That's the portfolio that you can actually log into energia.com and with as little as $100 invest in a portfolio of right now about 16 solar projects throughout Africa, and hopefully many more to come, and hopefully one that powers a large AI-based data center soon.
Thank you very much for that, Tyler. So that was a great video to show, and then I think this kind of video gave flavor to people as to what's really happening on the ground. And as you could see, so Energia is doing some great work there. And for some of you, if you've not had a chance to visit yet Abidjan, Cote d'Ivoire, you have to go there. It's just a beautiful city. I think you'll be mesmerized, I promise you. And I'm sure Tyler has had experience already. So what we've seen from you, Tyler, was an excellent breakdown of the different investment opportunity that we see in renewables energy, and I give people as you can see, all of you can participate, right? And I suspect by the end of today, so Energia may have some few investors, right? Because you did mention that obviously it was very accessible to everybody. And now, after getting a global overview of what data center is now in the world and the size of the market we're talking about, to talking to Tyler to understand how renewables energy can play a role in obviously spearheading the digital economy in the continent. So I want to now come down and give you some sort of a real world perspective. And I'm just going to turn to you, John. So John Jordan, because I'd like you to walk us through the experience of working on a data center project in the continent and maybe get to understand a little bit the lesson that you would have learned in terms of energy management, sustainability, so on and so forth. So John, over to you.
Okay, perfect. It's definitely nice to speak with everyone. Hey, how y'all doing?
Pretty good.
All right, that's what's up. Appreciate it. Some call and response for us. So I graduated from Morehouse back in 2011, and my business partner is also a Morehouse man. We built a social innovation firm called Remix, the Soul of Innovation. We started out as a 501c3 and Remix is a hybrid structure. So we have a new enterprise structure called an L3C that is Remix, the Soul of Innovation. And then we have our original 501c3 that we actually started as winning a competition at Morehouse called Fight for Light Inc. And that's our 501c3. And so those two enterprises work together. So the project that I'm actually going to present actually came out of doing a design session with students in the AUC, employees from Microsoft, and then community members actually coming together in a community innovation design session that we actually host at the Morehouse Makerspace that we ended up relaunching with support that we raised from Microsoft. So one of the key things, I'm gonna just start here, is just broadly, how many of y'all use AI or ChatGPT this week? Right. All right. So, and if y'all don't know it, it's probably running on your phones if you have an iPhone or any of these other things. AI isn't going anywhere. And for us to really accept that future and the reality, one of the things that powers the physical things that's happening in the cloud all have a physical infrastructure. And the truth of the matter with climate change is a threat to everybody and all of the physical infrastructure that exists. And the portion of our work is understanding that we actually created something called a shared value opportunity that actually brings community ownership of solar systems, like those that Energia fund, to really address this data center issue that Moses was speaking about. So Microsoft is actually building 3 data centers in Atlanta. They also, that same team is building 3 data centers in Johannesburg, South Africa. And so that team, the data center community affairs team, actually they have several teams within Microsoft. We work with their community development affairs team, which is basically a lot of the community groups who also said, hey, y'all are building data centers. There were plans to actually remove people from their homes. And then they actually engaged the community and said, hey, we actually don't need to do this. The community came up with a plan that actually kept them in. And this is over in Ben Hill area of Campbellton Road. Well, that same team, as they were building the data centers in South Africa, reached back out to us to actually run and replicate what we did in the AUC inside of South Africa. So they've just seeded this. And what our work is we've basically understood that the community can actually own the systems that are on empowering these data centers. And what that would allow us to do is actually generate income that is used to pay communities who are highly burdened, and using a financial commitment from a company like Microsoft to buy not only the energy, but the renewable energy credit, which is called a REC, that is sold internationally. And it's basically a way of doing carbon financing to actually say, hey, we're meeting our carbon goals that we put out to the public, but we're using our cash to actually do so. So we make sure that cash, we built a blockchain system to make sure that cash goes into frontline communities who otherwise don't have the credit or individually could not qualify to get solar on their buildings, specifically whether that's your rooftop and if you're living in the hood on the west side, or if you're a Black farmer on the in the Mississippi Delta. So we actually designed a virtual power plant. We're doing the exact same thing in the township communities, which have very similar relationships to like Vine City, English Avenue. Those are townships inside of South Africa. We're building a virtual power plant that connects South Africa and also the work we're doing in Atlanta that you all can get involved in. So what I wanted to do is play a quick video to explain what a virtual power plant is. It's 1 minute, and then you'll understand how we're actually using this as a digital technology that aggregates these things. And then we create a partnership because it's technically in the state, in a lot of states in South Africa, the utility company is a state-owned enterprise. And that we actually have an arrangement with that group called City Power and Escom to actually sell that in a buying agreement from Microsoft that we're negotiating now to bring these solar projects online in those communities. So this is an explanation of what a virtual power plant is. Let me know when you all can see the video. Thumbs up. Y'all can see that?
Yeah, is there?
All right, perfect. Thank you.
A virtual power plant aggregates and manages distributed energy resources, known as DERs, such as solar PV generators, energy storage, and gas generators, as well as building loads. Up to thousands of these assets can be scattered across residential, commercial, and industrial locations. This portfolio of energy assets, combined into a single entity, operates like a conventional power plant. It brings about new opportunities to the DERs by allowing them to participate in the energy market, including grid ancillary services, such as frequency regulation and reserve, to enhance grid stability. A virtual power plant brings value to the regulator, asset owners, traditional utility companies, and the consumer. A VPP facilitates a more diversified and dynamic energy market by facilitating cleaner energy sources into our energy system. For the asset owners, a VPP captures more value from DERs by enabling market participation, thus bringing higher returns and encouraging investment into renewables. The VPP enhances grid stability with services to better match supply and demand, allowing traditional utilities to better plan and optimize production efficiency. A VPP increases DER's returns, thus encouraging more renewables installation, leading to a cleaner and more sustainable energy supply, ultimately benefiting the consumer.
And really, I like to use this image here. What we really do is being able to actually have, let's say, a rooftop solar installation, a solar farm here, being able to have a solar canopy all connected to one virtual system that we actually manage, and then being able to have that go into battery energy storage. And then we use AI to be able to purchase that energy when it's most cost effective. And then also when demand is really higher on the grid, we actually use that to go into the battery storage and kick energy back to the grid. And so one of the things that this addressed inside of South Africa is these things called load shedding, which is where the grid actually, they have planned times where the grid has to shut down inside of communities. And of course, they reduce those in the commercial spaces more so than they do in the townships. And so our way of balancing this out is to get people on generators. And we're also doing this same project right there in Atlanta with Morehouse. We're working to put a solar panel on the parking deck, Wheeler Hall, Brawley Hall, King Chapel, which all shares the same meter there. And then also doing the same thing with the Leadership Center, and then connecting that to projects inside of Metro Atlanta. So you all can get involved and actually working on these types of projects and in the virtual power plant that we're building in the US, and then also creating a call and response with that work we're doing on the continent. So thank you all for your time, and definitely looking forward to any questions that y'all have.
Excellent. John, before you actually finish that, because can you explain a little bit to the audience, how did you come about putting this project together? Obviously, because you're coming from the States, go to South Africa, working on a project. So I'm sure there's a lot of people thinking, I like to have this journey, but I just don't know how to make it. Maybe you can walk them through the journey you've gone through.
Yeah, so we actually, our journey started where we did a design session with students at Spelman College. And one of the things that they realized was that most of the students, and the same thing is true for Morehouse, I actually had these statistics when I was there, is that most students who don't return back, you remember freshman year or in NSO, they have you look to your left and your right, and then they say, hey, one of these students ain't gonna be here. One, that's actually crazy. And then two, with the esteem of Morehouse, the fact that we're okay letting students who make it to those environments not make it through was something that was always bothersome. So the students came up with the idea of using clean energy to actually create a scholarship fund to keep students in, because that gap that a lot of students hit it that senior year when they have to come up with payment for graduations and things of the sort is about $1,000 to $2,000. So if you just had a fund that was able to do that to keep students in class was the initial idea. At that time, Spelman College ended up getting their innovation lab, which is now kind of grown. Morehouse was getting their makerspace. And so our idea was like, hey, how can we make something that actually, instead of us leasing generators like we did to actually bring awareness to this issue, we did a solar powered homecoming event at Spelman. And instead of making this, we came up with the idea of making solar powered generators in the innovation lab. And so that grew, instead of us just focusing on doing that on campus, it grew into doing something in the community where one of the issues in Atlanta is a thing called energy burden, where a large percentage of your income goes to paying just your energy bills. So after you get your money and you have to pay your rent, the amount of money that Georgia Power is taxing people, it basically leaves a lot of people with, still owing a lot of and living paycheck to paycheck. And in the communities around the AUC, that energy burden is almost 6 times higher than it is in Buckhead. And so the idea of building a microgrids that actually could address this was the design session that we did. So we actually raised close to 500,000 that went to all the AUC schools, but 200,000 of it went to Clark Atlanta. And the group that gave that at Microsoft was one of the ones that actually reached back out to us as they were building was the data centers, because they were building those data centers in Atlanta at that time. And we said, instead of you all just building data centers, we need to put solar on homes of people who are most affected by energy burden. And that was the design of the virtual power plant. The ideas came from students working on sessions. They came up with different renewable energy design systems that we're actually building out now. And that project grew from there. So they asked, is there a way you can do this as we're opening the data centers, do this in the townships inside of South Africa? So just in keeping those relationships and delivering with them, they brought us this opportunity to do in South Africa, which actually we had relationships on the ground because I was a South Africa Oprah Winfrey Fellowship that is now, I believe, run out of the Andrew Young Center for Global Leadership at Morehouse. So, what I did as students, we kind of kept that work and those relationships going. In that actually, we worked through those relationships to build the infrastructure that we needed to actually expand that virtual power plant in South Africa. And being able to connect again on this panel with like a funder like Tyler to be able to bring the projects that we have online in South Africa is another funding type of opportunity. So just managing the relationships that y'all have with people in class, the programs that y'all participate in is how we grew this. And then actually just tapping back in with the students and the creativity that's there now in the community. They have their own ideas. The thing that we put together is how to finance it without it actually costing the community money or them having to use their credit profiles to actually do that, because it just isn't feasible. And so that's where the buying power of Microsoft allows us to finance this. We do this with the utility company in America that helps Georgia Power, because they realize they can't stop it. If you did behind the meter, it cuts them out of the deal. And so us leveraging Microsoft buying, billions of dollars in energy is the only way we could actually negotiate this type of a deal. And so that allows us to get those communities most impacted paid. They need to buy energy for their data centers and renewable energy credits. And so now we just have them buying it through us to pay communities in a way that actually moves those investments in a bottom line deal. But it's not charity, because they're doing it because if those data centers are out without power for 1 minute, they lose hundreds of millions of dollars. For every minute a data center doesn't have power. And so we are just creating a shared value public-private partnership. But it's not charity, and we understand they're corporations. We're just building community infrastructure that makes our community benefit.
Excellent. That's brilliant. Thank you very much for that. So hopefully for the student there and also all the other attendees, it gives you an idea as how can you find yourself in the same situation than John, maybe creating other solutions and make sure that you can move the needle forward. So that's a fantastic conversation so far. So we have about less than 20 minutes left, about 18 minutes if I'm correct, before we finish. But I'd like to get a chance to get you guys to ask some questions. So this is your chance to engage directly with your panelists. I know you can connect with them as well outside of the session, but it'd be good because you took the time, obviously, to attend this session. to maybe ask some question about challenges, solution, investment opportunities, whatever you want. So who wants to go first? So I'll be extremely disappointed if there's no question, but I'm sure there is.
Go ahead.
I can start.
Yeah, go ahead. You just speak loudly.
I like it. So, brave.
Is there any chances for like investment opportunities into this or no?
For which thing?
For the virtual power plant.
So that's a question to John Jordan.
There is opportunity for sure. One of the things, the way that we do it is based off of you identifying some either land or a place for you to do this, but also by actually working inside the virtual power plant, we've created an opportunity for sweat equity. I think the model that like Tyler is building for retail investors is going to be key for understanding really the financial opportunities for things like if you wanted to invest your refund checks in these types of projects. And then our intention out of this type of call would be to have a platform like that be able to underwrite these things so there becomes multiple ways where you can actually get paid. One, by participating and working in it. And then two, by actually then investing your bread through that platform that then can own a return. So I think it's important for Tyler to also share some of the retail opportunities they have, and then also why that retail opportunity is necessary. I don't always know if people understand the regulations required for making investments in terms of that. But yes, if you can engage by working with us in the virtual power plant that we're setting up in the US, you can get sweat equity for that because it operates as a cooperative. So as you work in there, you actually, all of your sweat equity is actually tracked. That actually then gets you ownership payment via our coin that we've built on blockchain that we've built on a platform called Hashgraph. And then the other thing is if you actually have some land that you have in either in your family or things of the sort, we work with you to put that either in a family trust or bring that into our virtual power plant and design a solar system that then can get you and your family paid through a longer term deal.
Excellent.
But I think, Tyler, if you can share just that retail element, I think that would be a good.
Yeah. Yes. So in our Solarize Africa portfolio right now, we're primarily have been focused on like smaller, under a megawatt, rooftop solar, projects. So think elementary schools, retirement or nursing homes, hospitals, places like that in and throughout South Africa, primarily Botswana, some areas down in the southern part of Africa. But we would love to partner with like John's company if we could figure out a way to make that work and underwrite these projects and get some of these projects, these virtual power plant projects on the Energia platform. But essentially, we operate through something called Regulation A, which was part of the Jobs Act that Obama signed in 2012. So Regulation A, it's really a crowdfunding regulation that allows companies like ours to sell investment securities without having to register them with the SEC. So our investments are approved by the SEC. We have to provide semi-annual and annual reporting and audited financial statements to the SEC, but we don't have to get registered and go through that process, which can be a very long, arduous, labor intensive and costly process like a mutual fund company would, or a publicly traded, stock or ETF mutual fund, those kinds of investments. So basically that Jobs Act allows us to raise capital from the retail public like yourselves in a very, kind of cost effective manner. So that's how we operate. And like I said, with as little as $100, you can kind of start to participate in some of these investment opportunities throughout Africa, and hopefully there's more to come with John and his group, and the other John on the call can connect us, and we can all get have a discussion here in the future about how to kind of continue to roll the ball downhill.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Do we have another question from the floor? Or maybe John as well. So John Moore, feel free as well to jump in if you have a question.
Does the AI help y'all solve problems or help y'all come up with the ideas?
The question is whether AI helped you solve these, develop these projects and solve the problems, or
Solve the problems or come up with
come up with the ideas.
Actually, in this instance, it didn't. Ideas came from the students, like and everyday people's creativity, and I think that this is where AI has its role in things of the sort. But there is also a value of human creativity and human beings, right? And we have to make sure that, as automation replaces certain type of work, the work that is best suited for human beings are things like creativity, putting ideas and how we must use these tools in terms of what we should be doing with them. So it actually came from everyday people that we actually learned about, and they invented past the state of the art. But the virtual power plant was a model, and then our custom like applications of how this is going to work in the different areas actually came from people, and not AI. We're just leveraging the AI infrastructure to be able to do this, and then to maximize the spread of funding and investment.
Yeah. So maybe
Yeah.
Moses,
And
from
Moses,
global,
yep.
yeah, go on, John. You were going to say something. Yeah, I just wanted to say, Moses, maybe from the global perspective, as you were describing the overview of data centers. So, do you think what is the role you see AI playing in sort of coming up with those solutions?
I think AI is going to be hugely important because, again, in terms of optimizing and seeing how best to deploy, planning, looking at how to optimize the power consumption itself. And even as we see, I think NVIDIA recently was showing their platform, which allows you to sort of build virtual factories and virtual data centers. So I think the AI is going to be huge in terms of, before you even build it or you plan for it, how do you simulate it? How do you conceptualize it? And then how do you build it in such a way that's going to be maximally optimized for energy efficiency and also being as performant as possible?
Excellent. Thank you very much for that, Moses. Much appreciated. Is there any other question that you want? I know, John, you wanted to come at some point. So let me just see from the student if there is any other burning question that they want to contribute to. Any question? Because we have about another 5-6 minute conversation before we're gonna start wrapping up. So there was a student. Okay, yeah. Apparently there was a student in white shirt right at the beginning. I can see. I don't know if it's him or her, but I can see that. Is there another question? I think it looks like there was a.
Tony, go ahead.
How you doing? My name is Jeremy Hall. I'm a junior biology and finance major from Chicago. I had a question. So just looking at like the long-term impact of you guys' companies, what's a potential issue or I guess roadblock that you guys are, kind of, anticipating?
That's a great question.
It could be for
John,
anyone.
Tyler, Moses, what kind of roadblock are you?
Yeah, I can kick it off. I think for us the biggest challenge right now is balancing the amount of money we're raising with the projects and the size of the projects that we're deploying, right? Because there's a clear, it doesn't do us or our investors any good if we try to raise money for a $10 million project and it takes us 2 years to raise that capital. It's not getting deployed fast enough, and it's kind of having a dilution effect on our investors' returns. So we want to try to match up like the pace at which we're raising capital with the size of the projects and what's available in the marketplace. And then obviously when you get into like operating in countries like Brazil and Africa and continents like Africa, it's challenging because we don't have a ton of boots on the ground there. We work with local partners. It's a little easier here in the States when we have contacts and we can make a short trip to a site to kind of manage those things. So I think that would be it for us, is just kind of managing the flow of capital, which right now we're raising kind of anywhere from like $2 to $3 million a month to the size of the projects and what's getting developed. And then also I would add just one quick caveat to that too, is like the impact, right? We as a company have to make sure these are bankable, investable assets on behalf of our investors. We can't just go and take a huge home run shot on an off-grid solar project that may or may not, be able to collect the revenues. We have to be smart about what we invest in. And that's why like this Abidjan Accord and, some of these other things like the World Bank and Bridgewater and some of these really large players coming into Africa is going to help make these projects more bankable and kind of from a risk standpoint, easier for us to invest in.
Tyler, can you explain bankable a little bit? I think that's so critical, and a lot of people don't really understand the depth of what that entails.
Yeah, so I mean, just bankable, at a very high level would just be, projects, businesses, investments that, a financial institution, a sophisticated financial institution like a bank would feel comfortable like lending to or providing, debt financing to, the risk-adjusted returns of the investment, would make sense, for a larger institutional investor or a retail investor. But, just kind of assets that I think, I think the higher risk investments, the startup company, or like again, an off-grid solar project somewhere that's going to power a small village that's not backed by any kind of government or sovereign debt, things like that. I mean, we're working now in Colombia where we're providing these really small little solar installations to villages that have never had power before. And we could not do that unless that the payments were backed by the Colombian government. So it's backed by sovereign Colombian debt, which would make that a bankable project for us. And it would make sense for us to invest in that on behalf of our investors. But if it weren't for that, if the Colombian government weren't stepping in and guaranteeing basically that debt, it would be too high a risk of an investment for most investors to kind of participate in.
Quick question for you, Tyler, just chipping in. So what portion of your investors are retail investors as opposed to institutional, roughly speaking?
So we've done a couple of institutional investments. We kind of did them out of necessity. We saw a couple companies like Energia come and go before us. And it takes a long time to get the retail business off the ground. We need like a long runway to do that. So we did a couple of deals. We did a deal with a private equity kind of investment bank called BTG down in Brazil. It was like a $26 million deal to build solar with them in Brazil. We also did a deal with a London listed trust called Victory Hill to build some projects in Brazil as well. That was about a $60 million deal. So we did a couple of those big institutional deals just to kind of help with revenue, and fees and expenses so that they can pay me a salary to do this and that they can, pay our small but nimble team of 50 or so people to kind of stay in business and keep the lights on. But from retail investors, we have about $35 million that we've raised over the last, I'd say call it like 3 years since we've really been doing this in earnest. And we hope to raise another 30 this year. So that's our goal.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So,
Tony, maybe I could interject.
please.
I think there's a question here about the challenges, and I do actually have a slide here that I can share.
Okay.
I hope that's visible to all.
Yeah.
And yeah, this is sort of especially from an Africa supply issue. So power supply issues. I don't know that you can notice this, but I'm actually right now in a power outage here in Nairobi. It's about almost 8 p.m. Kenyan time. And this is exactly the kind of situation that we live in. So imagine trying to run a data center that has to be running 24/7 with 99.99% uptime and reliability. You will find that there's diesel generators, there's all sorts of backup facilities built into the redundancies that make sure the data centers don't go down. And this is just a reality of Africa. Number two, highly operational, right? I remember a few years ago, I used to spend a lot of time in Nigeria, and it was interesting to see that, the generators were the standard operating procedure in terms of powering up offices and the likes, and the grid was actually the option and not the other way around. So what tends to happen again is that, the amount of money that is spent in cooling systems, additional redundancies and so forth, just make it so much more expensive to do so. And then fiber here is relatively new. As much as we are seeing a great deal of digital transformation, we are still very much in the very early days of building out sort of digital infrastructure, whether it's undersea cables, terrestrial fiber, inland networks. Africa is very much, I would say, almost in the nascent phase of doing this, although it's improving dramatically from, let's say, 20 years ago. And then I think going back to what Tyler was saying, financing and investment barriers. We live in an economy and a market that is sometimes poorly understood from a global perspective, and obviously comes across as being risky, which is why you sort of start looking at sovereign funds and backing up, so that, you know, when somebody's looking to make an investment, it looks bankable, because let's say the government is behind it. And in fact, in Kenya, I believe in the next few years we'll be having a green data center worth $1 billion built in an area called Naivasha, which will be powered predominantly through geothermal energy. And that is really requiring multiple governments, you know, the United Arab Emirates, Microsoft is coming into that, G42, which is an AI investments business. You know, the kind of resources required to do sort of greenfield investments in markets like Africa is not small. And of course, you know, there's a lot of research and planning that goes into making all this happen. So maybe just, you know, those four sort of challenges to me, sort of mainly the main ones. And of course, things like talent. You know, we see Africa as a very young market in terms of our youth. A lot of young people today in this continent are building skill sets around technology. But guess what tends to happen? They get to a certain threshold, and then before you know it, they're hired by companies outside the country, places like Europe and North America, especially data scientists and the likes. So we sort of have this, you know, brain drain or talent flight that tends to happen, so that even as we build these new capacities, when many of these young people become, should I say, highly productive and internationally relevant, they become hot property for not just businesses in Africa, but, you know, data center business in Africa, but actually global businesses will actually look to hire them as well. So those are some of the things that, you know, we see as challenges facing data centers in Africa.
Excellent. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think that is a great conversation that we've had, but I need to bring us to a close here because we're coming close to the end of the lecture. So I want to thank our panelists, Moses Kemibara, we were just speaking just right now, showing you the reality of what's happening in Africa and how potentially we're building on finding solutions to tackle that. So Tyler Herbert, that give us an understanding of how renewables energy can definitely back up those plans. And John, was beautiful just to see your case study in South Africa and more specifically your VPP. So sharing those insights on how the future of data center and renewable in Africa is. So we know the market of data center is projected to reach something like 1.4 gigawatt by 2030, and it's growing at a very fast pace, I think it's 12%. So this for me represents a unique opportunity to integrate renewables energy solution and also build a very much sustainable digital infrastructure from the ground up, pretty much, yeah? So the challenge is clear, but also the solution, which is about collaboration across policy, investment, technology, to ensure we have a continent digital growth that is powered by clean, reliable energy. So let's keep up with this conversation, and I want to thank you all for your attention. Thank you very much, everybody. So we're gonna have a side session afterwards, but have a good lecture.
Thank you, Tony.
Thank you.
Rise of the sun in the morning light, drums in the distance,
Interested, I know that
heartbeats echo through the trees, dancing shadows in the breeze. Feel the pulse of the ancient land, footprints mark the golden sand.
and honestly, what they're doing is news to me. I'm not really aware of what all they're up to. So I'll get his phone number and his email address and put it out so you can contact
The
him.
AUC is like right now trying to like get students to really learn how to invest properly and how to do it, you know, in a smart way. So like I'm just looking at different alternatives to be able to do that.
Sure.
If anything that's actually gonna, you know, help the community at large. So I think this is something that can
No, absolutely. But you know, get the information first.